Hello, everybody. We are so excited to be here and share with you the Embrace Kids book this evening. I'm Taryn Brumfitt, and this is Dr. Zali Yager.
Hi.
And we're seeing some of you pop up with some comments, which is really lovely. To start, I think just a quick little intro for myself, and then I'll hand over to Zali to do the same. So for those of you who don't know me, I am a film director. I made a film called Embrace back in 2016. We are just about to launch Embrace Kids, and I'm an author and a speaker. I'm a mum of 4 kids, and just trying to keep all those balls in the air. That's who I am in a bit of a nutshell. My great passion and my life's work over the last 10 years has been talking about all things body image. And without going into too much detail tonight, I think just to give a little intro, it's basically, I once hated my body, then I learned to love it, and then I wanted to share with other people all around the world how they could love and embrace their bodies too. And I think the only way to put it is it became really addictive watching people go, what? You can love or embrace or be okay with your body. And then they went and did it, and they told me all the stories of all the things that they were doing once they learned to embrace. And it was just wild. And I thought, I'm going to put down my photography camera and I'm just going to do this, because I think there's nothing more satisfying and thrilling than to see people do what we're meant to do in life, and that is just kind of get on with it and enjoy our lives and focus that on our bodies, that they're not ornaments but rather the vehicles that get us from place to place and do all the things and feel all the things. So that's a little bit about me. Zali, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Zali Yager, and I am a body image researcher and expert. So kind of similar to Taryn, I've been doing this for a long time, but in a very different context, sort of stuck inside a university doing research to try to figure out what works to make people feel better about their bodies. And I started off doing that in sort of classroom settings, and then worked with mums and parents. So trying to figure out programs and different approaches and look at the evidence behind all things body image. So at the moment, I'm an executive director at the Body Confident Collective, and also a mum of 3, and also juggling all of the balls and the things in the air constantly. And so I thought we would start by talking a little bit about how we met, because I went and saw Embrace, Taryn's first film, in 2016. And at the time, I had just had twins. And so I sort of was very excited to leave the house of an evening and go to the cinema like a grown-up, and went with a whole lot of friends to a community screening. And when I was in the film, there was just such a powerful feeling in the room. And I got this sense that what Taryn had created there was something that was going to do a lot more than all of our research papers were going to do that we were publishing from inside universities. So I contacted Taryn, and we did a little study around the film. It was an evaluation to sort of see what sort of impact that had, and found that watching the film had just as much, if not more, of an impact as some of the really long programs that people had run with adult women. And women wrote, there were quantitative and qualitative elements of the study, but women wrote long, detailed paragraphs about just the extent of impact that this film had on their lives, and how they had gone on to pass that on to others as well. So we've been working together on lots of things, and we've got lots of exciting things to share with you tonight. Some more resources that are coming out soon, and some details about the Embrace Kids film, as well as talking about the Embrace Kids book.
Yeah, that's a really great intro, Zali. I have to say that for so long, when it came to the film, I was running around telling people, like, it's a good film. Like, can I do that because it's my film? No, it's a good film. You've got to go watch it. It'll help you. And then when you came along, and I like it the way you describe it, this little study, I mean, it was a large global study. And for those of you who aren't academics, it was published in a medical journal, which we all just sit on the sidelines and go, oh, that's amazing. So it was actually so nice for me to meet you. And that was quite a few years ago now. I think that was 2016 that kind of this began. And it's really interesting. I mean, you've been dragged out of, well, no, you haven't been dragged out. You leapt out of academia, right? As in you did it for so long, and you were obviously brilliant at it as an associate professor of a university, and you're so well known around the world. But you're out of that space now, and the fact that we've come together, it's been big ever since we've sort of come together. And you know what it is? I think it's, for me, it's the creativity meets the science. And I really want to honor you here, Zali, because you are so creative in so many ways. And I am so not scientific whatsoever, but that's cool. It's working. And the beginnings of the book, and there's a really great question here, like, how did you both initially connect and what was the writing process like? And we'll definitely answer that. But I approached you, Zali, and said, when we make, well, actually, let me take a step back. The number one piece of feedback we had from the film, the first film, was, I wish I had seen this when I was younger. We just heard that comment so many times. So I knew that we needed to make a film that would get in nice and early. And I was spending a lot of time in schools with the first film, speaking to 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And it just felt like we were meeting them too late, because some of them had this very dysfunctional relationship with their body for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So we knew that we needed to get in early. And in making the film, I reached out to Zali and sort of said, I need your help. You need to come on as a body image expert. And she leapt at the opportunity. Did you leap at it? I mean, yeah, I think you did. I mean, it was pretty cool, right? We did this amazing film, and we've been working together, quite hard over the last couple of years. But we knew what would happen when the film was released, because the film is the first step. We knew that people would watch it, and we cover off subjects, diversity, inclusion, representation, disability, gender stereotyping. We cover it all in the film. But of course, we can't take people on the journey from, this is what it is, and this is, it's 90 minutes is a film. It's a conversation starter. So we knew that we needed to provide resources beyond the film. And I actually asked Zali, you can finish this off, because when I said to you, would you write a book with me? Would you co-author a book for parents to help their kids embrace their body? What was your reaction?
No. No, I did not want to write.
I was crushed.
It wasn't about you. It was that you asked me to write a parenting book, and I was quite scarred from many of the parenting books that I had borrowed, maybe not read, but definitely bought and had stacked next to my bed, trying to raise toddlers. And, my first trip when I had my first baby was to the library to borrow a sleep book, because I was just like, help me. But I very quickly found that parenting books sort of just wrapped everything up in a neat, tidy bow. And none of that ever seemed to actually happen when I tried to implement what was inside the pages. And that just made me feel bad. And so I didn't want to write a book that would make people feel bad about what they'd done, or what they hadn't done, which is kind of like most of parenting is like a whole bunch of guilt and worrying that you're messing things up. But then I reconsidered, obviously, because we wrote a book, because of, we do webinars like this. I get asked to do talks all the time for parents, and you just can't fit it into a 1-hour talk. There's so much information that we need to unpack. And so the book is actually in 2 parts. The first part is for parents themselves, because when I go into a webinar and I'm talking about the kids, the number one thing that we recommend is that you consider your own journey first. And in order to really step parents through that, we wanted to put all of the evidence in the first part of the book. And that then forms the context through which parents can do all of the things with their kids, because they now have all of the background themselves, but they've also processed their own journey.
Yeah. Sorry, do you want to carry on? I was going to interject there. And I think one of the things was that we knew that, we've been doing this for 30 years between us, and we knew that this was a big problem. And the research was telling us it's a problem. The clinicians treating young people, they knew it was a problem. People would come up to us on the street and tell us that it's a problem. We're like, we know. And and that's why, thank goodness, you agreed to end up writing this non-parenting parenting how-to book. And I think you set the tone, and I think for anyone who knows what Zali's feeling, and I've felt that on so many occasions when it comes to a book, you know, the self-help, I'm like, oh, I'm on it, and I go get the book and I'm opening it up and I'm here we go, and then nothing seems to stick in those moments of I'm going to make a big change. But I think what we did in this book was especially in that first half, we unpacked the why, you know, that why women in particular are feeling the way that we felt about our bodies for such a long time, and perhaps why it's been passed on. But we also wanted people to give everyone hope that it's okay. Whatever's happened up until this point has happened, and let's not feel guilty about things that you've said or not said in the past. Let's all eyes to the front, get your hands on the book, read it, get it, and know that we're with you. And I think one of the things that I enjoyed most about writing the book with you, Zali, is another question that's come up with from Natalia. What was the most interesting thing that you learned whilst writing the book? It was actually some of the stories that you shared around parenting that made me feel better as a parent, because even though it's my favorite quote on earth, and I'm telling audiences all the time, it's by Steve Furtick, don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, because it's what we do. And I generally, well, I don't when it comes to my body or my life or what I do. I'm really comfortable with all those things, but I think the only place that I become a little unstuck sometimes is parenting. And especially when I look at other parents on Instagram and, I don't know, Mother's Day, their teenage son's bringing cups of tea into bed and someone else has cooked breakfast. I'm like, hey, it's Mother's Day. You know, like I did get cards this year. That was really lovely. But we do that. And I loved reading some of your insights. We don't want to go into too much detail, but the dentist story, I think that was genius, what you wrote about there. And it made me feel a whole lot better.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell the dental story? No, surely not.
You could.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
Go on. Give it, like, do a little truncated version.
All right. So I don't know about everyone else out there, but I just didn't think that flossing your kids' teeth was like actually a thing that people did in real life. I thought it was one of those like, oh yeah, of course I do that things. Anyway, so I took the 3 kids to the dentist, was feeling super proud about just like getting them there on time-ish. And the dentist proceeds to make me feel really bad about not flossing their teeth every night. And I'm like, well, they've each got 20 teeth. So that's like 60 teeth to be flossing that I would have to do. And like, I just think she has no idea what bedtime looks like in our house if she thinks that's a possibility. So then she proceeds to demonstrate how she does that on her like special chair that tips back with her special flossing device, and like, look how easy it is. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't have that chair. And I don't, like, you know, the kids are only sitting still for you because they know you're going to give them a toy at the end. And so, of course, felt guilty, felt shame, bought the expensive flossing device, proceeded to use that for maximum 2 days. And then, you know, it fell by the wayside and ended up, I just changed the dentist that I went to, and then I didn't have to deal with the problem. But I tell that story because there is a similarity there in terms of making people feel bad about their weight and why that doesn't actually motivate behavior. And it's one of the key misconceptions that we come across, is that people feel like they need to make themselves feel a little bit bad or make others feel a little bit bad about their weight or their shape or the way that they look in order to try to motivate them to engage in health behavior. And it's one of the things that we really drive home in the book, is that it's not actually weight that's the problem. It's our problem with weight that's the problem. And so we really need to ensure that we're not, you know, making ourselves feel bad or shaming others in order to try to encourage them to change their body shape, because we know now, and there's very clear evidence, that shame doesn't motivate health behavior. So that's why I tell the dentist story, really.
It's a great story, and I think for anyone who's watching, that's I guess the theme of throughout the book is that there's no shoulds or shames. Here is the evidence, here is the science, and here is some ways that you could implement that in your life, depending on what your situation is. Someone has asked a question around. Rose has written, do you write about the impact of social media on kids' body image? Would you like to take that one?
Yeah,
Zali?
sure. And so this is the second thing that we get most often is that people, when I say, oh, I'm a body image researcher, and people will say, oh, social media, it's so bad, it's so damaging for young people. And it is. But the problem with social media is that it comes in all different forms, and your feed is very different to my feed, depending on what I have followed and what the algorithm is throwing to me. So we do write about the impact of social media on kids' body image. It's a bit different than back in our day when it was magazines and TV, because the impact is it's a peer impact as well as immediate impact. So it's kind of enhanced and stronger in that way. But yes, we do write a lot about that. The main thing though is that we can't come in and sort of all guns blazing, like, let's turn off all social media and try to just don't use it then if it's making you feel bad, kind of thing. We really need to kind of work with them to first of all give them permission to unfollow anything that makes them feel bad about themselves, because I think a lot of people think they sort of need to be following certain things in order to keep up with conversations with their friends, or that they should follow things in order to motivate themselves to engage in health behavior. But all of the research around, particularly Fitspiration, shows that actually it just makes people feel depressed. It makes them feel worse about their bodies, and it does not motivate any sort of exercise behavior or intention. And so we just need to give ourselves permission to create the experience that we want from social media, and to unfollow and to report the ads, and to, really curate it and fix our feeds.
Yeah, absolutely. And gosh, I'm conscious that time is just marching on so quickly. I'd love to get to the 4 key messages that you'll find throughout the book, and also the Embrace Kids film as well, which is coming out on 1 September, which is way too close. That's I think it's weeks away, not even months now. But the 4 key things are really important, and they're actually really simple, and they're based on science. And I just love that, Zali, we've been able to, and also the data and everyone who's researched this around the world has been able to distill this down into those 4 key messages, which is celebrate diversity, focus on functionality, being kind to yourself, and recognizing real role models. And we talk about that in the second half of the book as well, and just sort of break that down, like, what does it actually mean? And celebrating diversity with our kids is such a simple concept, because it's about encouraging our kids to recognize all of the unique differences for themselves and for others, and just seeing how many different shapes and sizes and colors and abilities of bodies there are in the world. Diversity is just so beautiful, and it is changing. The world is changing so fast, it feels. When I started doing this work 10 years ago, people were like, oh, body image? What is this? What is that whole concept? And now it's a whole thing. We're moving in the right direction. But my favorite out of the 4, and I'll let you cover a couple off if you'd like as well, Zali, is the focusing on the functionality, because I know for myself that was probably the most life-changing remedy to how I was feeling about my body, was just to not focus on how it looked, but rather focus on how it felt. So instead of running up a mountain, probably more like dragging myself up a mountain, but getting to the top, and instead of checking my watch and being, oh, how many calories, or what time did I get, I got to the top of the mountain and would look at the view, and I would just sort of feel in my body. And I think, and this is very anecdotal, but I just think when I speak to people, especially young kids, I just think there's that little bit of life's magic that's missing. And I'm not saying that you can't choose fun, fashionable clothes, or get your hair done, or however you want to express yourself in the world is a beautiful thing and it's fun. But can we put more focus on how we feel as opposed to how we look? And I just think there's just a huge disparity in that at the moment. And that's why, again, this is anecdotal, but I mean, we know that there are the evidence to show how the mental illness, anxiety, depression has all been on the increase over time. And it has to do, I think, with the fact that we've just forgotten that life's meant to be enjoyed and not about what we look like in the mirror all the time.
I mean, you say it's anecdotal, but there is a lot of research around appreciating body functionality. And we just know from the research that when we focus more on what our body can do, then we worry less about how it looks. And I just think it is such it's such a simple reframe, but something that can be so hard to get to is just like, oh, wait, this is just the way that I get around in the world. It doesn't actually matter what it looks like. And I think that that's what we're trying to encourage and sort of drop in those messages to our kids over time. My favorite one is being kind to yourself, because there is now so much evidence for the benefits of self-compassion. And this is just turning down the critical voice in your head or that inner critic and turning up the voice of a kinder, more compassionate kind of response. And we know that if we do that, then we're less likely to have depression and anxiety and body dissatisfaction, but also just better we have better well-being. People have like better immunity if they're more self-compassionate, like all these things that you wouldn't even associate with, hashtag be kind to yourself or something like that. But it does actually have a really deep it works on a deeper level and it becomes more automatic over time. So that instead of beating yourself up about something, I should be losing weight or I should be exercising more or something like that. Just being really kind to yourself. And actually, I've been really lethargic since I've had COVID, or I've, really, saying the sorts of things to yourself that either you would say to a friend or a friend would say to you. And sort of going to that as your first response instead of the sort of critical voice.
Yeah. And I think I know there's a fourth one we'll get to as well, Zali, but I think it's something that we talk about in the book about how important it is to not say negative things about your body in front of your kids. You don't go for the run because you ate the chocolate cake. Food's not good, food's not bad. Food is just food. And we don't want to label food, but we also just what we would both love for people to take from the film and from the book as well is there's this disconnect with moving our body. It's become this kind of exercise sort of thing that we have to do, and it's almost punishment for something we've eaten or the way that we look or a number on the scale. And I think that if we can show our kids how joyous it is to move our bodies, whether that's running or just dancing in the lounge room with some music or going for a gentle walk or yoga, or there are so many ways to move our bodies, and our kids are watching and they're listening and they're learning. And I think it's the one big takeaway is how to role model that behavior for our kids. And that's the fourth one, is to recognize real role models, which some people aren't. Right, Zali? But that's okay.
Well, the focus there is just on being really discerning about who we're going to look up to and doing it based on what they do or who they are in the world rather than what they look like. So rather than just, thinking that someone is a role model because they are a model or a celebrity or they look pretty, really considering, well, what do they bring to this world? What do they believe in? And there's sort of that element to it. And then there's also the element of recognizing and looking through some of the images that we see to have that critical lens and bringing in some media literacy to really, consider, well, have these images been edited? Is that person using filters? Is that really a real depiction of their life? Or do you know that their bedroom is actually really messy on the other side of that screen? So I think
I've got a good one for you.
Oh, yeah,
and for all the listeners at home, I'm wearing pajamas. But I put a jacket on up the top.
Yeah.
You don't know. I mean, I talk about this a lot. This is one of the best topics that I talk about because I think it's hilarious. Is that whole Steve Furtick quote, like, don't compare your behind the scenes. I mean, wheels are falling off left, right, and center. And I've seen it. And I've seen the mess. And people are just like, everything's fine. And it's not half the time. And I think, that's, again, it's one of the themes of the book is just giving yourself permission to do the best you can. And no one's perfect. I mean, this sort of came up at the end of the book where I sort of spoke about, I talk about nourishing your body and choosing foods that are, in their most natural state, or all the colors of the rainbow, and food for me, because I ask a lot of my body, and this is what I try and teach my kids too, that gosh, our bodies do a whole heap for us. So let's just do what we can to keep them energized. But my teenage son is knocking back a zinger burger like every 2 to 3 weeks because he goes there after school. Like, I can't stop him. Like, it's what you see is not always what you're getting. And I think just even that in itself as parents, just to know that there's no perfect parent out there. And I think we start the book with that. Just the fact that you've gone and got the book and you're reading it makes you a really good parent because you're trying.
Yeah. And I think there's a question from Dex that's about what should we be changing in the language we use surrounding body image. And I think one of the really nice things that you've just done there, Taryn, is model a lot of the beautiful language that we can use around food instead of using good and bad and junk food and all of that sort of thing. You just used a whole lot of like, look at the colors here and how do we nourish our bodies and what does my body feel like? And I think when it comes to food, we need to be really just trying to instill the idea of trusting our body, listening to our body, and feeding it the sorts of things that are going to make it feel good, instead of a lot of the other conversation that exists around food. And that's the thing with body image, it sort of overlaps with all these other things like eating and moving and clothes, like what clothes you wear, and feelings and all of this other stuff. And that's what we go through in the second part of the book, is kind of looking at each of those areas and bringing in the stories, but also bringing in the science around those things and trying to focus on practical things that aren't hard to do at home. But I think that, and we'll probably sort of finish on this point, one of the main things that we do try to get across is not to say anything negative about your body. And I think that if you only do one thing to change, that is something that's going to be really powerful in your home, but then also that's going to ripple out to, around the world. If we all stopped saying negative things about our own bodies and started to try to model, appreciating our body, thanking our body for the things that it does for us, marveling at like, oh, I just did that. That was pretty cool. Then I think that we would see significant change.
I so agree. And it is a beautiful point to sort of head to the end of this this webinar. Is just that is that kindness to self and that gratitude. And I think, here's the other thing with the two big projects that we're launching at the moment. We're doing the film and we're doing the book. I guess what I would want everyone to know is that it's so much more than just, the hashtag love your body. It's so deep. So I would just love to encourage everyone to make sure that you see the film. And then, of course, you get the book. If you've got kids or you've got grandkids or you are around kids, get the book. One of my best girlfriends got the book, and it's one of our first reviews, Zali. I haven't shared it with you yet, but she hasn't even got kids. She's like, I got so much from this book. I was like, oh, that's really nice. The other thing before we leave, can we just touch on the Embrace Hub, which I think would be really important for everyone to know that this is launching tomorrow.
I feel like this is the launch party. Yeah. So, the reason why Taryn's wearing pajamas is because we have been working what feels like 24/7 to bring the Embrace Hub to life. And we had this vision when Taryn was talking about making the film, and we were going to write a book, but then we had this vision that we also needed this website that would house free resources for young people and for parents and for teachers and for sports coaches. And then we had that vision and it all seemed relatively simple. Actually doing it has been like a whole other story, but it's coming to life tomorrow. And there is also a podcast on there for parents where we talk through much of the stuff that we've talked through tonight, but just in that next layer of detail. So if you want to be able to multitask while you're learning, you can search us up on all of the podcast sites, but it's also on theembracehub.com. And just go there
live tomorrow. So by the time lots of people watch this later on in the week, it will be live. And I think what's really cool about the Embrace Hub is that it's all free. You know, they're all free resources. And Zali's team and my team of academics and school teachers and health professionals. I mean, we've just been at this for quite some time. I mean, why make a film and write a book? Why not launch the biggest website? I mean, the website is so enormous. When people see it, they're going to be like, how are you two even okay? But I guess it's just fueled by the passion that we have, that with lived experience from both of us in hating our bodies and knowing how that paralyzed us, depressed us, and just made us feel miserable for so long, and all that wasted time. I think what drives both of us more than anything is this opportunity that we have to stop this. Like, we weren't born into the world hating our bodies. These are behaviors that we've learned. We can unlearn them, but the possibility of our kids not even knowing that they should even have a problem with body image, like, please put us out of a job. You know, that's the same thing when I had to explain to my my teenager, which one was, I think it was the eldest, 16. I was explaining to him that in school, if you were gay, it would have been a really big deal when I grew up, and you would have been teased and you probably would have hidden it. And he was like, really? Why? I'm like, well, and it was such a beautiful response for him to just be like, oh, that's kind of weird that people would care. And so we've come so far. And for us, I think the next frontier is just that same response when it comes to our bodies. We were not meant to be at war with them. They're marvelous. They're incredible. They do so much for us. And if we can pass that on to our kids, then we'll just keep working 23 hours a day. Right, Zali?
I'd rather not.
Yeah, there's a whole work-life balance thing that's not happening, but good times. Is there anything else you want to add before we sign off, Zali?
I don't think so. I think we've had some really lovely questions that's let us hit on all of the things that we would want to share. And the main thing is, just to say that there's more information, there's more stories, there's all more detail that's in the book and on the Embrace Hub and coming in the film. So I think I would say read the book if you can, at least start the book before you take your kids to see the film, right? Like, plan to go and take them to see the film in September when it comes out, but you can start reading the book in preparation. That's your homework. And then there's all of the other things that you can then follow up with after going to the Embrace Hub, and listening to the podcast and all of those other things will help you to then extend the impact of the film over time. Yeah,
for sure. And I think I didn't mean to do like a, hey, did you, because you've got one on your bookshelf, Zali, which is just product placement at its best. It's 422 pages of this book. Like, we've really left no stone unturned. I think they'll find a lot of answers in there. And for everybody who's watching, especially the person who asked about the process of writing a book together, when I was like, oh God, I'm struggling to write, Zali would be the opposite, going, I just got so many words, I just got to cull them back. I'm just like, What's that?
Could have kept going, but needed to make it readable. So.
And it is readable. So everybody enjoy it. Make sure you stay connected with us through our own social channels as well. Dr. Zali Yager, and at the Body Image Movement, at Body Confident Collective, the Embrace Hub. We're really taking over your socials with body positivity.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.